Hello, everyone. Welcome to Durrett's Take. Sorry it's been a while since I last posted, but that's the summer for you. But now that we got football coming around, now it's time to reveal my 2026 college football predictions. Now, if you want to get more specific detail and analysis of all the teams and all the conferences, you have to go to my LinkedIn page down red and read my full article there. I'm just getting like a very short summary here of what I think is going to happen. So, um, so for the, I'll review, kind of like the tiers in each conference real quick, and then review my playoff predictions. So let's get started for the major conferences. So let's get started with the ACC. I think even though Miami didn't make their championship game last year, be it made it to a title game, I feel like they won't mess around the ACC this year. I feel like they'll be better and they'll be kind of like on the tier of their own, basically. And I'll be surprised if they're not. Louisville, SMU, Virginia Tech, Florida State, North Carolina State, Pittsburgh, Virginia. I kind of have them all in a similar tier, kind of like the tier two. So I can see basically mostly any of them meeting up with Miami in the ACC title game. In this case, I'm going to have it be Louisville doing it, but again, I could see anyone doing it. And then you get like Georgia Tech, California, Clemson, Wake Forest, Duke, Syracuse, who are just trying to like make a bowl game. You may you may wonder why don't you have Duke in the even the second tier? I mean, not Duke. I mean Clemson even the second tier. I just feel like it's too much of a roster turnover, and since Dabo Swinney doesn't rely on the transfer portal and NIL and all, I feel like it's going to be, a very up and down season for him. Um, and then the bottom tier, North Carolina, Stanford, Boston College. It's kind of, if you're a fan of one of those schools, you're just kind of like, okay, just don't be awful. Now for the Big 12. The Big 12 last year was kind of Texas Tech 1, BYU 2, and then you had your Tier 3, Tier 4, and all that. This year, I feel like BYU and Texas Tech are more on the same level this year. BYU's third in the country turning to production. Texas Tech, while they did lose so many key players from last year's team, especially on defense, they had a very good transfer portal cycle and high school cycle. So they, with the money they spend, they figure they can continue to produce, especially since Texas Tech has one of the easiest schedules in all the Power Four teams this year. So I kind of have them, both in the tier one. And tier two, I have like a Utah who finished, they're in the Big 12 last year. Houston, who finished top five. Arizona, who finished top five. I kind of have them in the neck in kind of the tier two, to where like if something goes wrong for BYU or Texas Tech, then I would look out for one of those teams. Um, to make it. And the surprise one may be Kansas State in there. I just feel like it's with the new head coach that has come over there, Colin Klein. I feel like if he can get the most out of quarterback Avery Johnson, then that would be the guy. And then for the tier three, you got like your TCU, your Oklahoma State, your UCF, your Arizona State, to where okay, they should be fine, maybe, but maybe they can go distance. Maybe they're a dark horse, who knows? But I feel like they're just going to be okay. They'll make bowl games, but nothing more. Then you got your West Virginia, Baylor, Cincinnati, where they're going to battle for bowl eligibility, and then you got in the last tier Colorado, Kansas, Iowa State. Next in the Big Ten, you got, in this case you got multiple tiers in tier one. I feel like Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, um, and you can even throw are all in a similar tier. You can even throw Michigan and Penn State in there, are all kind of tier one. Then you get USC, Washington, Illinois, are kind of, Nebraska, all in the tier two. Then UCLA, Minnesota, Iowa, the Northwestern, they're all in the tier. But basically, if you wanted to, you can even combine tier two and tier three all together, because you're just splitting hairs at that point between those teams. But in the tier one, I feel like it's a bigger tier than it was last year, the Big Ten. Because, like I said, I feel like Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, Penn State, Michigan, if you told me any one of those teams won the Big Ten, would not be surprised. And then for the SEC, I feel like you got Georgia and Texas um, as kind of tier one, but again, not far out. In tier two, you would have your LSU, your Alabama, your Oklahoma, your Ole Miss. I can see anything happening with those teams as far as like winning it all. And then tier three, I would have Texas A&M, Missouri, Tennessee, and you may be thinking, oh, why is Texas A&M there when they're top 10 preseason team? Well, their schedule for SEC standards was easy last year. This year it's harder, and they lost some key players, so I don't feel like they'll be the same. And then your tier four, these are teams just trying to make bowl eligibility, which is basically everyone but Arkansas State, with South Carolina, Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. Um, so now to reveal my playoff predictions. Um, so number one in my scenario, I have Georgia as number two. I've been going 12-1. Just one conference loss and winning, but decided of winning the SEC once again. Number two, I have it being Ohio State, and this was in the Big Ten's kind of interesting here because of tiebreakers and all that. But I'd actually have Ohio State as a two-loss team being ranked number two, above a one-loss Oregon. And the reason why is because Ohio State would have won the Big Ten, and Oregon wouldn't have even played the Big Ten. And the reason why is because I have a Ohio State Indiana rematch in the Big Ten. And what's interesting there is that even though I have Indiana beating Oregon, or Ohio State in the regular season, Ohio State would get their revenge this time in the Big Ten title game. So it'd kind of be interesting where I have Ohio State 11-2 at 2, and then Oregon 11-1 and 3, and then 4 Indiana 11-2. So 3 Big Ten teams in a row there. And then at number 5, I would have the Big 12 winner in BYU. And the reason why they'd be so high is because I actually have them upsetting Notre Dame in the regular season. So even if they suffer one loss somewhere along somewhere in the Big 12, if they win the conference championship with just one loss and win against Notre Dame, I feel like in the community award them being that high and getting them, good enough seed to get a home field advantage in the first round. Number 6 would be Notre Dame, right behind them because of the head-to-head there. And since Notre Dame's schedule is easy, Miami's the only other contested battle there. So if they even lose the BYU, they lose Miami, Notre Dame still be in a good spot. And then number 7, I have Miami. I have that Miami as being only loss of the season, so head-to-head would matter there. And then number 8, I would have that being Texas with a 10-2 record. I feel like Texas, this is the year that they got to make the playoffs, and I feel like Texas will beat Ohio State since they get Ohio State home this year, and that will be their calling card to get in, even if they do have 2 SC losses. And then number 9, I have Texas Tech, and the reason why Texas will get home field advantage over Texas Tech, despite Texas Tech, make it to their conference title game, and that would be Texas Tech's only loss would be in the Big 12 title game. Is because Texas, has the better quality of resume and all that. So that's why I'd have Texas hosting that first round game over Texas Tech. And then number 10, I would have LSU. I'd have them at 10-3, but that third loss would come in the SEC title game, which means I have Georgia being LSU in the SEC title game. So I'll be kind of. I have 10 LSU, Lane Kiffin getting it done there. I face off against number 7 Miami. So then, because the 12th seed would go to the group of 6 team, you would have your final at large spot to see, okay, who's going to face Notre Dame here. There's a couple different options. So for me, I have Oklahoma and Ole Miss tied at 9-3 in the SEC, and Alabama, I guess, as well. But Oklahoma will have the advantage. Will have the head-to-head over Ole Miss, so that knocks them out. And then between Oklahoma and Alabama, I feel Oklahoma will actually have the better resume. So I feel like that would knock Alabama out. So then it will really come down to between Oklahoma and then a 2-loss Penn State team. Because record-wise, you may think, oh, Penn State there, especially since that the committee has never had a 3-loss SEC team, and those 3 losses came all before the conference championship game in this case. So that's the kind of interesting factor here. But in this case, I feel like they would reward Oklahoma because one of Oklahoma's wins will be that non-conference game at Michigan, and now it'll be too loud for the committee to ignore, especially since Penn State's schedule is super easy. So I feel like they would get dinged for that despite having one fewer loss there. So I have Oklahoma there. And then the group of 6 team, there's 3 different candidates I thought of here. One, Boise State, of course. Another one being the American conference winner, whoever that is. In this case, I have this being UTSA. I feel like they're going to bounce back. And then another one being the Mountain West Conference winner, New Mexico. I really like them this year. But in this case, I have it be Boise State. So in the first round, you have 5 BYU versus 12 Boise State, which would be, regional rivalry-wise, that's an interesting matchup. And then you have 11 Oklahoma, 6 Notre Dame. That would be a great matchup. And then you got 10 LSU, 7 Miami. Cristobal, Lane Kiffin. That's a great matchup. And then Texas Tech, Texas would be a great matchup, especially with, Joe McGuire calling out Texas, wanting to schedule them and all that. If Texas Tech's going to get their test here. So then in the quarterfinals in the Fiesta Bowl, I have 6 Notre Dame versus 3 Oregon. It'd be a very close game coming down the wire. And we know how the teams that had buys don't particularly perform well, so that could be the advantage for Notre Dame there. But I am going to pick Oregon there to get the win. And then Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, you have 8 Texas, number 1 Georgia. Now, typically Texas struggles against Georgia, but because of Georgia's recent playoff struggles, I'm actually going to have Texas upset Georgia here. And then you got 10 LSU versus 2 Ohio State. Like last year, I think the 10 seed can make a go and run here, and I have them upsetting Ohio State. Lane Kiffin will figure out something. And then in the Goodyear Cotton Bowl, you have 5 BYU, 4 Indiana. It'd be a good game, but I have Indiana taking care of business there. So then the semifinals in the Orange Bowl, you'd have 8 seed Texas versus 4 seed Indiana, which would be a great matchup. But because Steve Sarkisian at some point will choke in the playoffs, this is the moment against the defending champions where Indiana will take the win there. And then for the All-State Sugar Bowl, you got 10 LSU versus 3 Oregon. It'll be a great matchup there as well. This is where LSU's road, fun ride will come to an end. I have Oregon winning that one. So therefore, you get an all Big Ten title game between 4 Indiana and 3 Oregon. Now, because there hasn't been a repeat champion since Georgia in 2021, 2022, it's just very hard to repeat. Especially since Indiana will have a lot of players that are different from last year's roster. So because of that, I feel like this can finally be Dan Lanny's time in Oregon to finally go all the way and get the job done with Dante Moore, a quarterback coming back. The key for Oregon here is that they had to replace both their offense and defense coordinator. So assuming the coordinators are capable and can get the job done, then based on the roster and the talent that they have, I feel like this could be the year where they finally do it. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast today. Please subscribe to my channel and tell about me. At the end of the week, I'll come out with my week 0/week 1 predictions for the top 10 big games of college football for the week. So stay tuned for that. Again, go to my LinkedIn page down to Reddit to see my full college football playoff preview article. Thank you very much. Y'all have a wonderful day.